This instructional video is over textbook pages 220 to 222. Example number 1. Luciana analyzes the data collected to determine how long after posting a new blog her new homepage received its maximum number of new views. Her data are presented in the table. How can she determine whether there is a relationship between the time after posting and the number of new views? Step 1 for determining the relationship between data points is to draw a scatter plot. A scatter plot is a graph in the coordinate plane that shows the relationship between two sets of data. After drawing the graph, you would determine your x and your y-axis values. For her y-axis, she chose the number of views, and for her x-axis, she chose how many hours it had been. You would also determine your scale. She counted hours, 0, 2, 4, 6, and 8. She counted number of views as 0, 100, 200, 300, and 400. Step 2. After drawing the graph and labeling the axes and the values, step 2 is to plot the ordered pairs. So just taking the numbers from the table and plotting them on the graph. So she plotted each of those points and came up with the following image. And it says Luciana can use a scatter plot to determine whether there is a relationship between the two sets of data. All right, example, it says Luciana collects data about the number of entries and the ages of the subscribers who enter the concert giveaway. The point that represents the data in the fourth column has coordinates of what? So in column number 1 is 10, 8, 2 is 11, 8, 3 is 12, 9, and 4 is 13, 9. So 13, 9 is our fourth column. Under the convince me, it says explain how Luciana would choose scales for the x and the y-axis. The scales is the values of our numbers. So we would say that our x-axis is the age in years. The age in years goes from 10 all the way to 15. And so when we choose our scale, we could choose a value of 0 to 10 in 1 year gaps, 1 year marks. So that would go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And we would go all the way to 15 because that is our top value, 0 to 15 in 1 year marks. You could also choose 2 year marks and count 0 to 16 and counting 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. For our y-axis, it would be the number of entries. Our smallest value is 8 and our largest value is 10. So again, we would choose a scale of 0 to 10 in 1 unit marks. So again, counting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 across the y-axis. Example number 2. Rochelle asked 10 friends how many hours of sleep they got the night before a math test and then matched that data with their scores. She plotted her data in the graph below. Did students who slept more get higher test scores? So we're going to look at the way the data points are clustered. If the y values tend to increase as the x values increase, there's a positive association between the data sets. Another way you can see a positive set is if you draw a general line and the points follow that trend. So that line is going in an upwards direction. Most of the points follow that trend line, and so it is a positive association. If the y values tend to decrease as the x values increase, there is a negative association. There's also a couple of other vocabulary words given. A cluster is a group of points that lie close together. So a cluster would be like here, where we've got several points really close. A gap is an area on the graph that contains no data. So that would be here, this extra piece. And then an outlier is a data point that is set off from the other data points. It's outside the normal group. It's outside the normal. And it says this scatter plot shows a positive association between hours of sleep and the math test scores. And so the statement we could make is that the more hours of sleep you get, the better your math test grade would be. For example number 3, it says Avery is the middle school basketball statistician. She tracks the number of minutes a player plays and the number of fouls the player makes. Her data are shown in the scatter plot. Is there an association between the number of minutes played and the number of fouls made? So because this data scatter plot is random, these points are all over the place, they are not going in an upward trend or a downward trend, we would say that this scatter plot shows no association. For our triad example, it says Avery also tracks the number of minutes a player plays and the number of points the player scored. Describe the association between two data sets. Tell what this association suggests. So again, if you can draw a line through the middle of the data points and most of the points follow that pattern, then you can say it has either a positive or negative association. Because this line is going up, we would say that this scatter plot has a positive association. And so the statement that we can make is that the more minutes a player plays, the more points they will score. If it is a positive association, it means both the X and the Y values are increasing. The more minutes a person plays, the more points they will score. For our key concept, again, a positive association is when the trend line goes in an upward direction. A negative association is when the trend line goes in a downward direction. And a no association is when the points are all randomly scattered on the graph. We can also see that a cluster is a group of points all together on a graph. A gap is the empty space, and an outlier is a point that is by itself. For our statements, for a positive association, the Y value increases and the X value increases. So if both variables increase, it is positive. For negative association, the Y value decreases as the X value increases. So that means that one is increasing and one is decreasing. And then for a no association, there is no consistent pattern. Again, it is a random assortment of values. 1, it says, how does a scatter plot show the relationship between paired data? A scatter plot shows if there is a positive, negative, or no association between the data points. Two, Marcy always sleeps fewer than 9 hours each night and has never scored more than 27 points in a basketball game. A scatter plot suggests the more sleep she gets, the more she scores. What scales for the axes might be best for constructing the scatter plot? Our x-axis would be the number of hours of sleep. Since she gets no more than 9, we could construct a scatter plot ranging from 0 to 10 in 1 unit marks. Meaning we count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. For the y-axis, we would use our value of points. She only scores no more than 27, so we could do a scale of 0 to 30, counting in 2 or 3 marks. So counting either by 2s, 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, all the way to 30, or counting by 3s, 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, all the way to 30. We would want to jump count there because 0 to 30 is a much larger scale, and if we counted by 1 unit marks, our graph would be too large. Number 3. Kyle says that every scatter plot will have a cluster, gap, and outlier. Is he correct? Explain. So no, Kyle is not correct. Clusters only occur if data points are closely related. Outliers only occur if there is a point that does not follow the general pattern. Number 4. Phoebe constructs a scatter plot to show the data. What scales could she use for the x and y axis? For our x-axis, which would be our shoe size, our smallest value is 5 and our largest value is 8. So we could do a scale of 0 to 10 in 1 unit marks, counting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. For our y-axis, which is height, our smallest height is 54 and our largest height is 64. We would want to count by a value of 5 or maybe even 10. Counting 5, 10, 15, 20, or even 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 in order to get an accurate representation that is not too large of a scatter plot. Germaine constructs a scatter plot to show how many people visit different theme parks in a month. Why might clusters and outliers be present? So again, a cluster represents points close together, and it would represent more people visiting during the same time. An example of that would be during summer, when students are out of school. An outlier is a point that's by itself. An outlier would be outside of the normal pattern. So why are people not going to the park during that time? It could be because the parks are closed for various reasons, such as holidays, maintenance, etc. So it's something out of the ordinary that causes the point to not be included in the pattern.